Ukrainian forces appear to be holding out in the battle for Bakhmut, but their last road in and out of the eastern city is under dire threat. This is recent video of Ukrainian forces heading towards the devastated city. That road is now the only escape and supply route, and much of it is now within range of Russian heavy guns. The CBC's Abby Kuevasan has more from London.
The months-long battle for Bakhmut has left only one road into the city from Ukrainian-held territory. Now it's the only supply route, but also the only retreat route. Russian troops and Wagner fighters have almost encircled the city. The head of the Wagner group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, once again publicly complaining his forces had not received the support from Moscow, the ammunition this time promised in February. He warned if they fail in Bakhmut, Russian front lines could collapse. The Kremlin craves victory there in hopes of securing a much-needed success story, but also then use Bakhmut as a launching pad for further advances into the Donbass. But U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin says the city isn't strategically important in this war. He calls any Russian win there as being purely symbolic. He also says Moscow has deployed thousands of ill-trained and ill-equipped troops to take the city. Ukraine has inflicted a high number of casualties there as it seeks to drain the Kremlin's war effort as much as possible. The Institute for the Study of War believes Ukraine has already started to conduct a withdrawal in the eastern part of the city. Bakhmut was once home to 70,000 people. Now about 4,000 civilians remain, and the deputy mayor there says they're without water, electricity, and gas. Abby Kuevasan, CBC News, London.
For more on this, we've reached Andrew Rosulis. He is a fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute in Ottawa. And Andrew, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate this very much.
Welcome, Andrew.
So how would you describe the state of the battle in Bakhmut right now as we speak?
Very desperate battle. As your reporter indicated, there is one road left for access to the city by Ukrainian forces. That road is under heavy Russian artillery fire. So it is unsafe, but they must move anyways, and that's what they're doing. And this is a very difficult calculation that the Ukrainian defense staff has been making, whether to hang in there, and by hanging in there, they are drawing down Russian forces. They are, in fact, causing attrition, but they themselves are losing forces. It's a balance. They are losing fewer Ukrainians to the Russians, but nevertheless, a tough battle of attrition. The question then becomes, how strong are the Russian pincers? Because they've got them surrounded on three sides. Can they close and cut off the Ukrainian garrison and leave it surrounded, as the Russians did to the garrison in Mariupol once before? So a very tight battle, difficult to call right now.
So you, at this point, you wouldn't know which side is winning?
Well, you can say that the Russians are winning. They have the momentum, in the sense that they have the city surrounded on three sides, but they haven't won. In order to win, they would have to either surround the city, choke off the Ukrainian garrison, or the Ukrainian garrison would have to withdraw, and then the Russians would occupy. Either way, right now, it's the momentum favors Russia, but Ukraine is still in the fight.
What is the importance of Bakhmut for both sides?
For the Russians, this is a town that's in the way of its major objective in this center of the front, which is to take the entire oblast of Donetsk, to reach the administrative boundaries still further west of where Bakhmut is. The Russians do not control the entire oblast. That is their objective to do so. The Ukrainian objective is, of course, the mirror image opposite, to deny the Russians the ability to do that, and to hold on to as much territory in Ukraine as possible to deny the Russians that objective. So it's a classic thing of your territory versus my territory.
To what extent do you think the Ukrainians can wear out Russian forces?
The odds are not wholly in favor of Ukraine, in the sense that Russia has more soldiers and more population than does Ukraine. And so in the longer running war of attrition, it favors the Russians. Now, in this particular battle, that's not necessarily the case, because Ukrainians may be causing greater attritional rates on the Russians in that locality. But the Russians could still pour in more troops in the longer term and overwhelm the Ukrainians. So in the longer term, attrition favors the Russians. In the short term, the Ukrainians believe they are still at some advantage by causing attrition to the Russian forces.
So let's talk about the founder of Russia's Wagner mercenary force, warning that they're out of munition, that they just don't have the weapons, and that, in fact, if this collapses, if they aren't able to take Bakhmut and are forced to withdraw, that the entire Russian front line could collapse. What do you make of that?
Well, we have to understand the context that he speaks. He is a political aspirant to become a mainstream political power in the Russian elite. He is using his mercenary group, the Wagner group, as his sort of vehicle to political power. And there is a friction between this group, the Wagner group, and the regular Russian military. And so there has been this debate and a sort of push-pull on resources. Now, in February, it's true, the Russian Ministry of Defense promised the Wagner group it would get the ammunition that it's required. There must be some difficulty there because Prigozhin has come on this tape, but the tape is not dated. So we don't know when he said this exactly. But he's saying, I'm not getting it and I may fall back. Now, you must remember that, of course, that's his perspective, and it's a political perspective that he's making. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense has not commented on that, and there are regular Russian troops involved in this battle as well. So I would think it's a bit going too far to say if he doesn't get his ammunition, the entire front collapses. I think I would take that personally as an overstatement of the situation.
Okay, so from a military point of view, what do you think we should be looking for in the hours or days ahead when it comes to this fight in Bakhmut?
It's exact whether the Ukrainians will decide to withdraw along that very precarious road in the next few days, or they believe that they are strengthening their position despite the hazards, and that the Russian position is actually not getting the ammunition that they require and is not able to actually close the pincers. It's a very delicate standoff. So we watch literally with bated breath, as they say, to see which way it's going to go.
Andrew, thank you. Andrew Rasmussen, a fellow with the Canadian Global Affairs Institute.